Okay, brilliant. Should be everyone in here now. Thank you for joining us. So we are about to run our transition to university panel. What I'm going to do to start the session is I'm going to ask each student ambassador to kind of tell us who they are, where they're from, so which university they're from, which course they are studying as well, and one thing that surprised them when they moved on to university. So I'm just going to ask the ambassador from Exeter to introduce himself.
Hello, my name's Connor. I'm a fourth year English student. I've just come back from my year abroad. I study at our Streatham campus in Exeter, and something that surprised me when I came to university was the level of academic freedom that I had. So as an English student, normally in A-level, you're given very set texts, but once you get to university, you can kind of have free reign over whatever you'd like to study within a specific module, and I love it.
Brilliant. And then Bath, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Jasmine. I study social work and applied social studies at the University of Bath. And I think the main thing that surprised me is how quickly you actually settle in. It doesn't kind of feel like it at the time, but suddenly you kind of know where you're going without even realizing. And you feel a lot more comfortable in the new place quicker than I thought you would.
Thanks, Jasmine. And then hello, hi Cardiff.
Hello, I'm Morgan from Cardiff University. I study medical engineering, and I think the thing that shocked me the most was how many opportunities are available for you if you want to take them.
It's a really good answer. So throughout this session, it is going to be quite a relaxed session. So please do pop any questions you have in the chat. The questions will come direct to me, so they won't be publicly available. And then if you have any questions, then I will ask them to each of the student ambassadors in turn. So please do pop any questions you have in the chat. We've been having some great questions through in the other sessions, so it'd be great to hear from you all. So we do have some questions that are coming in at the moment. So first of all, Jasmine, you kind of hinted at this already, but could you tell us like how easy it is to meet new people at university?
So I'd say because everyone's in the same boat, you always hear that and you're like, oh yeah, you always say that. But because everyone doesn't really know anyone, they all kind of want to be friendly and get to know you. And even just like hanging around in kind of places where other people will be, it's a really good way to meet new people. And I really recommend like having more than one circle. Like even if you're really, really close to the people in your flat or your house, maybe trying out a sport or society, getting to know the people on your course, maybe like for the first few weeks, try and sit with a few different people in lectures or something, just because it's great to have so many people at the start. So then you can kind of choose who your closer friends are going to be. Because obviously the people that you live with, the people you meet in your first day, might not be your people. So I think
that's really good advice. I think especially on those like that first week, kind of everyone's sort of doing everything, aren't they? And it's hard to kind of, yeah, it's really easy to meet people, but maybe not to keep up those relationships that you make in the first week. So
yeah, and that's okay. Like it's okay to not speak to people that you spoke to in Freshers Week, because it's just the way it is. Yeah.
Really good advice. We actually have a question for Connor that's just come through. So what's it like studying English at Exeter? So I guess kind of maybe we can talk a little about how much you study during the week, so contact hours and things like that.
Yeah, so in Exeter, if you study English, the first module you do is Beginnings, which is kind of a survey of English literature. And then you'll be, at the same time, you'll be doing something called Approaches to Criticism, which is looking at kind of major philosophical and literary theory. Right from kind of formalism, so looking nuts and bolts at English, right the way through to feminism, Marxism, and then at the end you kind of get to post-human theories, which is crazy. And then you also do a module called Academic English, which is kind of building up English skills. And then you start to choose some of your own modules. And something that's amazing at Exeter is how many academics we have, which just gives us an enormous choice of modules. So in second year, you have 3 kind of ways of choosing modules of before 1750, after 1750, and then like no time period. And in each of those, there are maybe 15 modules that you can choose, and you have to choose one from two different ones of those. And that's kind of the only restriction you have. And then when you get to third year, where I am now, I had a list of maybe 60, 70 modules that I could choose from. And so that's, I think, a real strength of Exeter, is the breadth and depth of our courses. You know, when I was looking around universities, I saw very few that had quite the spread of course that we have at Exeter. And those modules are things from, you know, very traditional, like studying of Chaucer and Shakespeare, to once you get to third year, I know people who are only studying Ulysses, like that's a module, just studying Ulysses. Or I know people who are looking at the Harlem Renaissance, or I also know people who are looking at, I'm doing a module about travel writing, which is kind of very interesting. Something I'd never really thought about is how travel and writing kind of.
It is, Connor, I think you just froze in there. So what I might do is I was just going to introduce the idea of a module as well. So this will probably apply to more than one university as well. You are back. But this will probably apply to lots of different universities. But just the modules that Connor was explaining. So at university, you'll have to take a certain number of compulsory modules in order to graduate with that specific subject you're studying. And then you can pick up elective or flexible modules as well, which in a lot of cases don't have to be within your subject area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on from a question from Toby, which is, what is the research quality in psychology like, and how easy is it to conduct your own research? So what I would just say on this one, Toby, is just to have a little look on psychology websites, on university websites. You can find out a little bit about research in different areas. But I might just ask Morgan, like, have you been able to engage in research and things like that during your course so far at Cardiff, or how have you found it?
My course is quite different to Connor's course. I'm doing obviously a very specialised course in medical engineering, so we have a lot less optional modules. We still do have some, but we do a lot of like designing and building components. So in my first year, I built an insulin pump completely from scratch, coded, built it, everything. It was ready to go into a patient. In second year now, I'm doing a hip implant for an elderly patient. So whilst we maybe don't touch too much on research, in Cardiff University Engineering, there is loads of opportunities for you to almost do your own research, if that makes sense.
That sounds super interesting. Really, really cool. So Jasmine, what I was going to ask you is, we've had a little question about societies. So like, how easy is it to join societies, and do they cost money as well? Does it cost to join societies?
So it kind of varies uni to uni, but I think there's definitely some overlap. There tends to be like a huge range of sports and societies. People go to like Quidditch society. At ours, we have like curry appreciation, all the different nationalities, because Bath is a very international campus, but like you don't have to be part of that nationality. So I have friends who like joined the Scandinavian society because they really wanted to join in, like going to IKEA with them and things. Some of them do cost money. So at Bath, all the sports cost money, and then some of the societies cost depending on what they are. So like I was part of vegetarian society in first year, and I paid £5, and for the entire year, every week I got a free meal on a Wednesday. So in my mind, that was a really good deal. Some of them are free. A lot of like the ones maybe subject specific are free. And then at Bath, like last year you paid for each sport club that you want to be in, but this year you pay one membership and you can join any club. So I'm sure different unis have different kind of options, but a lot of them offer free tasters and things, so you don't have to commit to paying if you don't want to do it. A lot of the time the sports you have to pay because of like insurance and equipment and things, but they're pretty affordable. And like at Bath Uni, I'm not part of a society, but I can still use a lot of the sports facilities just being a member of the uni, so that's pretty good as well.
That's really cool. I think definitely the bit about the taster sessions and things is applicable to a lot of universities. So a lot of ambassadors that I've worked with, and please wave your hand if you don't agree, but a lot of people say like in your first week or in the first month, like people might join like loads of societies. Like you can sign up to, so someone has asked, can I join more than one? You can join as many societies as you want. There's not a limit on it. And then by the time you get to Christmas, you're like, oh no, I don't have enough time to do all of them. So maybe go down to like 4 or 5. And then by your second or third year, you might sort of just pick some that you're really, really dedicated to, and maybe take up a position in a society as well. So definitely like good advice for all universities. Connor, we've had a question about what's the support with lectures studying at university. So could you explain in general sort of the difference between a lecture and a seminar and maybe the support you get? And then maybe we can speak to Jasmine and Morgan about the support that they've got from their universities as well. So lectures, love them.
So I quite enjoy lectures. Quite often people kind of approach lectures as someone is telling you exactly what to think, but actually you should think about it more in a, this is very much humanities, in more like psychology and engineering and STEM subjects. They probably are telling you something very important, but in humanity, they're often telling you kind of approaches. So if you sit in a lecture and say, I really, I found a lot of interest in that, then that's great. You can use that approach going forward for that text, and maybe you can apply that to other things. Whereas sometimes you just really don't get on with something like something that they might be saying. Seminars, on the other hand, are where you, or some universities call them tutorials. They're you to kind of get your own ideas and share them. And
oh, Connor, you've frozen there.
Kind of get feedback on them. Someone else. Oh, this is sad.
Don't worry. If you want to switch off your video, it might kind of. You are back now. You're a little bit frozen. If you want to pop off your video, it might help with the streaming.
Can you hear me? And
yeah, crystal clear. So the support for lectures.
Great.
Do you feel supported by your lecturers? And
oh, definitely. They often normally in Exeter we record all of our lectures, so you can watch them again online. At the moment, all of our lectures are happening online, which is great because you can kind of fast forward through bits you don't really care about, or if you want to go back to it, you can easily do that. Lecturers are also really kind of generous with their time. You can send them emails asking them questions, or you can sign up for things called office hours, which is where an academic has basically their door to their office open and you can go and chat with them about ideas.
That's fab. Thank you, Connor. So Jasmine, is it kind of similar at Bath, like in terms of lectures and seminars? And Safi has actually asked, linking to what Connor's just said, so has COVID-19 impacted lectures? Like, is everything happening online, or is it what some universities have made reference to, a blended approach? Like, how have you found it?
So for me, I'm doing quite a small course. There's only like 30 of us, but luckily I actually did a different course in my very first year. I did like international development, which has a lot of sociology modules. So I kind of know about it all. For us, lectures kind of give you the core content, like the basic theories and things. They're kind of just talking at you. It can sometimes feel a little bit like death by PowerPoint, but they need to get the content across to you. And because they often are really passionate about their research, it is really interesting. And then a seminar tends to be like a discussion of maybe some of the theory, maybe applying it. So for me, most of my lectures are kind of a seminar style because we're a really small group, but we might look through a case study, do some discussion and things. And then at Bath, if you do like a STEM subject, you'll have labs and tutorials as well, which might be like going through a problem sheet or something. In terms of COVID, at Bath, they've done something called the Bath Blend to try and make it sound really fancy. But basically, depending on the course as to how much contact hours you actually need, they kind of promised everyone they would have at least 4 hours of in-person content a week. But obviously with restrictions and things changing, they've just got to stay flexible. For me, I'm currently on placement, like in the local area. So I don't have any in-person lectures, but I have friends who go up for a seminar a week or a lab, or kind of mixing it up. I think the good thing is when the pandemic first happened in March, the uni had to adapt really suddenly to online, and they still taught us, but they didn't really know what they were doing with Zoom. Nobody knew what was happening. Whereas now they've really worked really hard over the summer. They use breakout rooms and things like that and kind of interact a lot more with you. And I think as much as it is all a bit weird and we get Zoom fatigue because you're staring at yourself and the camera kind of all day, using things like breakout rooms, it feels like a real seminar, and you're kind of even more forced to engage with people because you have no idea who you're going to be in the breakout room with. So I think it works really well.
I think that you've picked up on some really important points there, Jasmine, and as well, it's really relevant to everyone in this session because obviously year 13 or maybe year 12 at the moment, and we've learned a lot from March to now, you know, how quickly things can change and how quickly universities and institutions, organisations can adapt. So obviously we don't really know what September 2021 is going to look like, but it's really good kind of getting insight into what different universities are doing at the moment and how quickly things are changing. And as you said, I love the Bath blend. It's a cool term, but
and they asked
really
us
good
for feedback on it. So
Yeah.
over the summer, they were like, right, this is the situation. We obviously can't have everyone on all day. And I think for my uni, they try and get each kind of year group up in a day to campus, because at Bath, the campus is definitely separate from the city. The first years live on campus, but nobody after first year lives on campus. So it's a case of like, okay, all the second years who do sciences are going to go up on this day, and it seems really complicated, but they're definitely open to feedback on it, which I think is really good.
That's really good, and I think it is important to know that, you know, you are represented through a students' guild or a students' union, and students do have a voice at university. Morgan, I wanted to ask you as well, because you're taking a very different subject to Jasmine and Connor. How have you found, you know, the blended sort of approach with what you're doing, and, you know, how do you in general find lectures and seminars and teaching? Is it different from A level? Was there quite a jump, or?
Yeah, there was quite a jump. Kind of like Connor touched on earlier, doing a STEM subject, it is a little bit more rigid and a little bit more, especially in first year for engineering, you have to have your maths down very, very strong. So even the lecturers realise that sometimes it can be a little bit much, but they'll often link it back to why you need to know this. So as much as it can seem a bit, oh, maths again, they'll say, this is why you need to know this, and they'll tie it into their research or their co-workers' research. So it always keeps it interesting, and it helps keep you grounded, because by second year now, it's a lot less maths and a lot more doing stuff with, you know, actually helping. COVID has changed a lot. I've gone from, you know, being in person in uni for something like 25 hours a week to now completely online. We in Cardiff Uni, especially in the School of Engineering, are doing something called a base room, where basically they bring people into the School of Engineering. So in medical engineering, there's only about 40 or so of us per year, I think. And they bring all 40 of us into a huge room, so it's all still socially distanced. And it's just a way for us to be able to kind of see other people and work on problems together, because it's not the same over Zoom, but they are doing their very best.
That's fab. Thank you, Morgan. It's really interesting to hear like different universities and also very different courses everyone's taking. We've got a question from Jess, which is, how do universities help students find employment? So, Connor, do you just want to have a quick chat through careers, and maybe we can chat to the other universities as well about how, obviously you guys are all student ambassadors, but if you have any friends who've picked up part-time jobs as well. So Connor, do you have any?
Yeah, so at the University of Exeter, there's a big kind of focus on employment, kind of all the way through your university. So in first year, you'll do something called X Factor, with an E at the beginning, which is everyone's favourite day, where they start to talk to you about what might happen after university. And then we have the careers zone who run that day, and they run throughout your time at university, and I think the first year after you graduate, to help you to kind of signpost you to jobs, offer resources, and you know, help you out if you're applying for jobs. So through the career zone, I've got a job working in the College of Humanities. So I work in the digital humanities labs, who are kind of helping to transition everything to online at the moment. Loads of my friends are kind of older than me, because obviously I went on a year abroad, and for them, they've been able to get lots of help kind of finding jobs at the moment. So through things like LinkedIn, through the job searches they have, they've been able to find really good jobs that our university has kind of got partnerships with. Every university has partnerships with different companies, so they've been kind of helped with people from companies who come in and kind of do workshops with them. At Exeter, the career zone are great, and you can kind of go to them at any time. So I'm sure other unis obviously have a very similar thing, and I'm sure one of the other ambassadors will go on about theirs.
I think in my in when we were discussing earlier in an earlier session, I was saying, you know, it's a really good idea to have a look at the career zone and the career support that's at university, and graduate employment rates are something you can take into account when you're looking and choosing a course as well. I'm just going to move on because we have a question about accommodation. So Jasmine, you kind of made reference to accommodation earlier about
Sorry, I was
campus.
just going to say, I think it's really important to talk about the fact that Bath is a very placement orientated university, and I don't want to not say it.
Please.
Basically, it's not a bad thing, but if you're not doing a placement at Bath, people are surprised. And obviously with this year with COVID, some people have struggled, so you're surprised that there are so many people around. Pretty much everyone, I think it's like 70% of people at least apply to go on placement. Bath has placements specifically for Bath students. A lot of people will then get employment from their placement company once they've graduated, and every single department has a dedicated placements team. So it's just a really big deal that for placements at Bath. I think it's like the top provider of placements, except from like an agricultural specialist uni. Like we're like the top placement uni, so I think that definitely links into the employment. But then you were asking me about accommodation.
That's okay. What I might do is, because we were talking about placements, I might just add that when you're applying for a course at a university, a lot of universities will let you apply for kind of the year in industry or the placement year, or at Exeter we call it an industrial experience year. You can apply for that from the point of application, so you'd be applying for a 4-year course with that year built in. That's a slightly different UCAS code than if you were taking a single honours. So when you're looking at courses and you're considering whether you want that embedded in your degree, that is something you can kind of declare now when you fill in your UCAS form. So important thing to know. Similarly for study abroad, you can declare that from the point of application as well. So Morgan, I will ask you about placements and work experience and things as well. How have you found the career support? Have you done a placement, or how have you found it so far?
So I personally haven't really been too interested in a placement. It's a great thing, but it's not for me personally. I can understand for a lot of year 13s and year 12s, I remember feeling like talking about graduate jobs was like a lifetime away. So I'm sure other universities have something like it, but Cardiff Uni have something we call Job Shop, which is basically you can get hired throughout your time at university, but it's not like a big commitment. You can just say now work in a bar for a night, or you can help out with an open day for a day. So it helps you get that bit of work experience and that bit of helping you along without feeling like, oh, you've got to commit to a 20-hour-a-week part-time job, which can sometimes feel like a mountain of work on top of your uni work, which I just think is a great thing to have, that like very flexible working. Because I've done a lot of work for the uni. I think at one point I was working like 4 different jobs for the uni, and they're all just very flexible hours. And I really have loved working while studying.
That's fab. And that links back to something that I know that we spoke about in sessions earlier, which was about those time management skills as well. And, you know, you're going to be you're managing your own workload at university, which could be quite a contrast for people who are kind of listening in at the moment. So kind of you've hinted at, you know, you might be juggling a part-time job and your studies and society commitments as well. So it is a bit of a change when you get to university. So I will just ask, so we have another question. So with regards to placement to study abroad, can you apply for the regular course, just history, and then when you get to uni move on to study abroad? So this is kind of from a uni to uni basis. So I might just ask Jasmine, are you able to comment on that for Bath?
So for Bath, not all courses do study abroad. I'm not sure how that works, but the thing is, if you take a placement, you can do it literally wherever you want, as long as it meets the certain amount of days. So a lot of people I know will do their placement abroad. I think for every course except for psychology, if you apply for the standard or the placement, you can swap between. I think the reason for psychology is that it's one of the most competitive courses at Bath, and a lot of the time psychology placements are quite hard to find, especially clinical psychology. But they still do placement for psychology. But every other course, I know people who had applied and weren't going to do a placement and decided they were going to. And I know people that have done it the other way around. It's pretty normal. And I think it's the same with study abroad, is that it's quite competitive. So it's definitely worth applying if you're considering it and then deciding not to. I think it would be harder to go from not having applied to do it to deciding to than deciding that you don't want to do it, but it's definitely possible at Bath to flick between them.
And I think it does definitely differ from university to university and from department to department. So if you are considering it, definitely do get in touch with the department, because things can change and be taken on a case by case as well. But Connor, you have taken a study abroad year. So tell us about how you found that application thing. Did you apply from at the point of UCAS, or did you add it on, or what did you do?
Yeah, so I actually applied for it at the point of UCAS, but I know people who applied midway through first year. And it was harder for them to get through because they tier it so that it's the top people in the non-study abroad course who get to take the placements. So it is kind of easier if you go straight in, because then you only need a 60 at the end of first year. Whereas I know people who were rejected from a study abroad after getting a 65 because they couldn't transfer the course. But also I would say, if you are thinking about changing onto the course, have a look at some of the requirements. So I know at Exeter in English, the way that study abroads are given out is on the basis of how you were graded in first year. So you might, if you're thinking about changing over, you might need to think, okay, well, I need to make sure I put the work in for these specific kind of summative assessments, because unlike other people, it's not just a pass-fail year. It may well be a year that defines where you're able to go on your year abroad.
So yeah, I think again for several universities there might be, if you are moving on to a study abroad year in your second year, they might look at the grades you've attained in your first year, but definitely kind of do chat to universities if that is something you're considering. We've got 3 minutes left and we do have a question for Morgan, who, don't worry if you can't answer this, because Luigi, what you might have to do is if you chat to Ewan on the Cardiff stand afterwards, if you just do want a little bit more information. But Morgan, we've been asked for, you reference a job shop, which sounds fab. So for modern languages, could you do something in the job shop to replace a compulsory third year abroad? So if we want to pick this up in the Cardiff one in a minute, just say.
I'm not sure is my answer. I would think not, because job shop is kind of separate to your courses, so it's more tied in with the students' union, which is a separate entity to the courses, which makes it very like it doesn't matter what you're doing in your course. You can go to the SU, you can go to job shop, and it doesn't affect it. So the best thing would be is to email someone from Cardiff Uni. I can't give a definite answer.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I think it kind of just it comes back to what I guess we've all been saying today, is if you do have questions, like universities employ hundreds of people just to answer your questions, and they're not scary, so please just ask. And also we've got all the universities here are on something called UniBuddy, which you can access through UCAS or through university websites, where you can chat to current student ambassadors, like these 3 lovely ambassadors here, and they can answer any questions you have, and that's just through an app online. But do take up the opportunity in the session in a moment's time to chat to the current students and current staff from each university to ask something really specific about a university and about a program or what student life is like there, and kind of build on the conversations we've been having here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask, I did make reference to kind of how you have to manage your time at university. So just as a last question, if I could ask you all just to give a really short kind of piece of advice, if you could give one piece of advice for like that jump and that kind of time management thing, like what's one thing that you wish you'd sort of known about managing your time? Jasmine, you gave a really good kind of hint about it, about don't worry about the first week, and don't worry, you don't have to keep chatting to everyone. But how have you found managing your time? Like, could you give us just like 10 seconds of advice?
I think it's a case of it sounds bad, but thinking about what actually counts and what actually matters. If the uni lecturer gives you a massive reading list and you look at it all and you think, oh my gosh, I'm never going to finish all of that, look at the key texts that they've said are most important. And if for you that week you can only read those key texts, then that's okay. And then when you go into maybe doing an assignment, you could expand more. I think people look at the whole reading list and they panic, and it's just not that bad. I have never completed a whole reading list on a week ever. And I've been at uni for 3 years. So yeah.
That's useful advice. Connor, 10 seconds of advice, or you're that side of mine?
Just to kind of go on from Jasmine, what I normally do is I get I get a diary, put in the most important things, make sure I've got time for that. Then I put in the next most important things, have time for that, and I put in the things I want to do.
Great.
Timetabling is great.
Fab. And Morgan, might have to be 5 seconds of advice just as before we finish the call.
It's okay to make mistakes.
Perfect. Right. Thank you. And we'll all see you in the applying to Bath, Exeter and Cardiff sessions in a moment's time. Thank you for joining us and we'll see you in a minute. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Bye.